Welcome to the second session of storyboarding journalism. I hope my voice is audible and everyone can hear me clearly. So today I'd like to welcome Poonam Burde. So she's an IIJNM alumna and she's been working in the industry for over 10 years in broadcast journalism. So she is the deputy news editor of Times now. So she's been effectively juggling the planning and presentation of news. And she also presents news and conducts debates. From a trainee journalist at Times now to leading a team and driving the agenda of a primetime show on the channel, Poonam is a complete news junkie. So today she will be talking to us about how she sifts fact from fiction, and in an era of sensationalism, how do you make sense of the news around you, and how do you not lose sight of the things that matter. So welcome, Poonam. Now over to you.
Thank you, Nandana. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, guys. You've gotten an introduction about me, so I'll just start about how it all began for me. It's been 10 years for me in the industry. 2012 is when I graduated from IIJNM, and I wasn't anywhere at the top of the class, so to say. I'm sure the dean would also agree with me there. I'm sure she was a little disappointed in me by the end of the year, but I think I found my footing 10 years later. So not saying that any of you who are still students there, that it's okay to not take this seriously because you'll find your footing someday. But yes, it is not that hard if you know what you want. Because I remember when I started working, we were a bunch of I think 10 trainee journalists or 12 trainee journalists who joined on the output desk, and we were just thrown in the deep end. I joined Times Now right after IIJNM, and there was no training as such. You were just trained on the job. You saw, you absorbed, and you learned. That's just how it works. And then it's like the survival of the fittest. If the sooner that you get the hang of what's happening, the sooner you try and understand what's happening, and then you just fix yourself in that particular mode, and that's just how it works. Nobody is going to train you, so you need to keep your eyes, ears, all five senses really open as far as the newsroom in the broadcast industry is concerned, because that's just how it works. As far as being in TV is concerned, I knew I wanted to do TV. I also knew I didn't want to report. I am not someone who is great at talking to people I don't know. So some would say I'm in the wrong industry for that to begin with. But so at least that I knew for sure that I didn't want to be a reporter. So being on the output desk was something that I was very comfortable with right from the start. And that clarity really helped me to be there this long. Because to be honest, being in a TV newsroom is extremely stressful. It is very, very stressful. The pressures are crazy, especially if you're in a place like Times Now or perhaps Republic. It's going to get you. You're going to have breakdowns more often than you think you do. You're going to have breakdowns when you think you didn't even know they existed. It happens. It happens to me even now. I'm 31, and I'm not ashamed to say that there are times when I find myself in the middle of the newsroom thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this to my life? That happens. Those moments will come in your life. But like Nandana also pointed out, I'm a news junkie, and that's really what is important. If you have the passion to do this, then you will survive till the end. So that's really important. That is what you need to know as far as what you want to do and how you're going to get through it, because otherwise you're not. For instance, it was just a couple of years into the industry that I was working with Arnab at that time. And he's someone who can lose his cool very often. And when he loses his cool, it is crazy. If you think you're scared of your dad, then, well, this is another story altogether. There was a time when I was on the ticker. I was perhaps 2 or 3 years into the job, but I knew what I was doing. I knew I was good at what I was doing. I was on the chair. Arnav was standing next to me, and he's going crazy about something. There's some story that we've missed. It's breaking on some other channel, and all hell has broken loose in the newsroom. He's yelling and screaming at anybody and everybody that he can find. There's an empty chair that's next to me where I'm sitting. There's an empty chair next to me. He's walking by, he's yelling at someone, and then he just kicks that chair. And that chair goes tumbling down. And I'm sitting right next to that chair. This is me perhaps at like 24 or 25, not very old enough. But I'm just and I am at the ticker. The ticker is like the most important job in most news channels. That is where the viewer looks at first. So you cannot freeze when you're sitting there, because that is your first point of entry, so to say, into a news channel. What you see on the screen first is perhaps the ticker, be it your breaking news, or be it your teasing your exclusives, or whatever. Your ticker is your main USP of the channel, so to say. And there I am sitting with him, kicking chairs and yelling and screaming at people, and I'm not thinking, I'm just writing what I'm supposed to write. It's like I don't know what's around me. And this is a story that a lot of my reporting managers, a lot of my peers even talk about today, that we would have never expected for a 24-year-old to sit calmly through that stop and just keep doing her job. So sometimes that is also something that is important. You have to tune out the world around you to do the job that you are doing, because otherwise it's never going to happen. TV newsrooms are extremely noisy. It's crazy. You are yelling at the top of the screens all the time. At least, especially if it's Times Now or Republic. I'm not very well versed with how the culture in other news channels is, but with these two, that is something that you expect. You see noise on the screen, you see noise in the newsroom. That's just how it works. That's just how it translates. So now that we come to noise, we often talk about how it's just noise as far as the TV channels go, especially as far as TV debates go. And that's something that we've seen in the last couple of years, perhaps. Uh, the age of NDTV and having a sane debate where everyone's point of view is being, heard and processed, and then everybody's calmly responding, that is somewhere lost. That is something that people don't connect to, is what at least our generation feels, is also what people who head newsrooms these days feel, which is why we see the kind of debates that we see. A lot of times that noise is just noise. There is no news in it. Or in the case of Arnab Goswami or Republic, when he got arrested, he became the news. You are a journalist. You don't become the news. You are there to present the news, to present the facts. But for months together, he became the hero. It was only about him. That perhaps worked with their loyal viewers, and that perhaps works with a lot of people who otherwise would not watch Arnab. But then suddenly he's become this person who was anchoring for 2 hours in the day, to now this person who has fought the system. But it really wasn't the case. He portrayed himself that. But for people who do not know what goes in the inner workings of news channels, would not know that. So for the layman, for the viewer, here is this man who's fought the system, who's fought the government single-handedly in the state that is out to get him. He's been arrested. That's not the case. You do not become the news. You are there to present the news. And that's something that I feel every anchor should perhaps remember. Of course, there are times when some amount of drama is needed. In the end, we're all working for TRPs, because that's where the revenue comes from. That's also where after a certain level of your designation, your pay scale also depends on the kind of money that the company makes. So grabbing eyeballs is required. So some amount of drama is required. And I would just like to share the screen and show you one clip of mine, which is on Twitter, which happened during one of the debates a couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, in fact, when this entire Maharashtra drama was playing out. For a week or so, we had the state paralyzed by just what the politicians wanted for themselves and for the party. Governance was out of the window. And that is something that we as journalists, that is something as common citizens, people want to know what happens to a state, a city for 5 days, 7 days, 8 days, when all that your elected representatives can think of is finding their footing or keeping their government alive. Where does that really go? Especially considering it's Mumbai, and it's the financial capital of India. There's a lot going there. There's a lot of money pouring in, pouring out there. There's the amount of taxpayers there is extremely high, and they would want to know what's happening to that money. So here is this. I'm just going to share my screen and show you that video. I would call this now. Actually, let me just show you the video, and then we'll have this conversation. It's a 6-minute video. I'm just going to play out the entire thing for you. If you want me to stop anywhere in between, you can just signal and I will do that.
संजय गुप्ता जी, आप तो अभी से पुलिस प्रोटेक्शन में तोड़फोड़ करवा रहे हैं। अगर वो आ जाएंगे बात करने तो तब क्या होगा उनके साथ, ये बताइए ना। कौन गारंटी लेगा उनकी सिक्योरिटी की? आप ये देखिए कल जो
और आके वो देखेंगे कि अपने ही पार्टी के लोगों ने हमारा ऑफिस, हमारा घर तोड़फोड़ कर दिया है और हमारी पार्टी कुछ नहीं कह पाई। उसी समय जब हमारी पार्टी हमारी तरफ इशारा कर रही थी कि वापस आ जाओ, पार्टी एक परिवार की तरह है।
जिस पार्टी ने उन्हें विधायक बनाया, जिस पार्टी ने उन्हें मिनिस्टर बनाया, उस पार्टी पर कब्जा करने की कोशिश करते हैं।
शिवसेना का
आप मुझे बताइए
90% विधायक
समझ नहीं है
संजय जी,
सरकार बदलना एक अलग चीज होती है और पार्टी बदलना एक अलग चीज होती है। पार्टी को बनाने के लिए काउंटर मेंबर चाहिए होते हैं और जबकि
संजय जी शिवसेना का हर विधायक मोदी जी के नाम पे जीता था, ये आपको भी
बाला
पता
साहब
है।
के नाम पर,
वो तो बाद में नहीं, मोदी जी के नाम पे जीते थे,
बाला साहब के नाम पे, बाला साहब
नहीं,
बाला साहेब की बात कर रहे हैं एकनाथ शिंदे और बाकी सारे विधायक संजय गुप्ता जी कि उसी बाला साहेब ठाकरे की जो आइडियल्स है वो आप भूल चुके हो सत्ता के लिए। उसी बाला साहेब की भी बात कर रहे हैं शिंदे और उसके विधायक जो वहां पे गुवाहाटी में।
बात एकनाथ शिंदे कर रहे हैं, मैं उनकी बात से सहमति रख सकता हूँ। जो बात विधायक कर रहे हैं, जो बात
से सहमति रखते हो उनके घर तो ना तोड़े जाए,
रखता हूँ मगर उनके
तरीके से सहमति रखते हो उनके घर तो ना तोड़े जाए ना, उनके ऑफिस तो ना तोड़े जाए।
जिस तरीके से वो कर रहे हैं, एक पार्टी के चीफ को, एक पार्टी के चीफ उनसे बात को मानना चाहिए।
बट वो तो छोड़ने को कह ही नहीं रहे।
इस बात को कह रहे हैं कि आप मेरे सामने आकर के
कह रहे हैं कि हमने कभी इस्तीफा नहीं मांगा। We don't want the chief minister to resign. We want the alliance to go because that is bringing Shiv Sena down. The Shiv Sena that was founded by Bala Saheb Thackeray. That is exactly what they're saying, Sanjay ji.
In an interview, they just said in an interview they are part of Shiv Sena.
वो कर रहे हैं, वो मांग सही है मगर तरीका सही नहीं है।
They want Uddhav Thackeray as their leader. They don't want unholy alliance with NCP and Congress. Where is the disconnect?
बात सही कह रहे हैं, मैं बात से एतराज नहीं करता, मैं इस बात से इत्तेफाक रखता हूँ कि वो बात सही कह रहे हैं, मगर वो तरीका जो है वो पहले उद्धव जी के सामने सारे बैठ करके कहते और अगर नहीं मानते तो उसके बाद अपना इस्तीफा देते। तरीका होता है शिष्टाचार तरीका होता है, ये तरीका नहीं होता।
सबके ऑफिस को तोड़ने का तरीका सही है, सबके घरों को ऑफिस को तोड़ने का तरीका सही है।
मैं जो बात कह रहा हूँ पहले आप ये बताइए, क्या ये तरीका सही है कि एक पार्टी अपनी पार्टी के चीफ
सही है या गलत, ये पार्टी और ये रिबेल कैंप मिलकर तय करेंगे। Come back to the drawing board, have a conversation and you can decide whether this was the right way to do it or not, whether your concerns are right or not. Fair enough, that is between the party. If you say that क्या आप ये भी कि आज जो तोड़फोड़ हो रही है महाराष्ट्र भर में, सिर्फ मुंबई में नहीं महाराष्ट्र भर में, वो भी गलत है, वो तरीका भी गलत है, क्या आप कहेंगे?
तो ख्याल आपके मन में है, वो ख्याल ख्याल ही रहेगा और आपके सवाल के बदले में मेरा सवाल रहेगा। आप मुझे ये बता दीजिए कि जिस तरह से विधायक पार्टी में बैठे हैं, क्या वो सही है? क्या महाराष्ट्र का फैसला गुवाहाटी में होगा?
वो मेरे विधायक है।
महाराष्ट्र का फैसला महाराष्ट्र में नहीं होगा?
बट जो तोड़फोड़ हो रही है ये पब्लिक प्रॉपर्टी है।
मैं आपके जिस तरह से आप
टैक्स पेयर का पैसा है, इसीलिए पूछ रहे हैं।
जिस तरह से आप मुझसे सवाल पूछ रही हैं, इसी तरह से मैं बीजेपी के जो सपोर्टर या लीडर बैठे हैं, मैं इनसे पूछ रहा हूँ आपके माध्यम से, क्योंकि आपके माध्यम से ही सवाल आ रहा है, आपके माध्यम से ही सवाल इनको जाएगा। गुवाहाटी में जिस तरह से विधायक बैठे हैं, ये हमारे देश के अंदर ऐसा नहीं है कि किसी विधानसभा का इलेक्शन हो,
सीधा जवाब है हाँ या ना।
किसी दूसरी स्टेट के अंदर जाया जाए।
मुझे आपका पॉइंट समझ आ गया है कि जो तरीका है गुवाहाटी जाके अपने कंसर्न्स रखने का, ये तरीका गलत है। I understand that is the party stand and the party is liable to have that stand. It is your stand, you can have so. मेरा सिर्फ एक सवाल है, टैक्स पेयर का पैसा है जो तोड़फोड़ कर रही है शिवसैनिक, वही टैक्स पेयर जिसने आपको चुन के आपकी गवर्नमेंट बनाई है, जो पिछले 2.5 साल से चल रही है वहां पे, उसका क्या? Do you condemn that or no? That is my simple question.
जो महाराष्ट्र से भागे फिरते हैं,
अरे जो महाराष्ट्र में रह रहे हैं वो क्या करेंगे?
फिरते हैं, वो महाराष्ट्र सरकार क्या बनाएंगे?
महाराष्ट्र में he is hoping that the government runs। एक हफ्ता हो गया तो पार्टी कैसे बचाएं, इसका आंदोलन चल रहा है। पिछले 2 दिन से तोड़फोड़ हो रही है महाराष्ट्र में, जो रह रहा है आदमी, आम आदमी, उसके पैसों का क्या? वो तो महाराष्ट्र में है।
पार्टी का फैसला पार्टी फाउंडर मेंबर करते हैं, विधायक नहीं करते। और विधायकों को जल्दी से जल्दी महाराष्ट्र में आना चाहिए। उन्हें इस बात की चिंता होनी चाहिए कि महाराष्ट्र में क्या हो
तो
रहा है।
आपकी चिंता बस
महाराष्ट्र के
इतनी
अंदर
है
जो
कि
क्राइसिस हो
विधायक
रहा है,
वापस आ
इसके
जाए,
लिए
सरकार
जिम्मेदार
बच
वो
जाए
लोग
और
हैं
पार्टी
जो
बच जाए,
महाराष्ट्र से बाहर
बाकी
हैं।
जो स्टेट में हो, जो आम आदमी का हो, वो कोई बात,
फैसला
नुकसान
करें
हो
यहाँ
गया
पर
तो
बैठ
कोई
करके
बात,
जो भी है,
इतना तो
यहाँ पर
आम
बैठ
आदमी को
करके
भी
फैसला
सैक्रिफाइस
करें
कर देना
महाराष्ट्र में
चाहिए
बैठ
अपनी
करके
पार्टी
क्या
के
हो।
लिए। क्या आपका ये कहना है?
देखिए आप मुद्दे से भटक रही है।
आप तो
मैं
मुद्दे
सिर्फ
पे
ये
आए
कह
ही
रहा
नहीं
हूँ
सर।
कि महाराष्ट्र
मेरा
के
तो यही
विधायकों को
मुद्दा था
महाराष्ट्र
पिछले
में
10
लाना
मिनट से,
चाहिए
ये
और
एक ही
महाराष्ट्र
सवाल
के अंदर
पूछने की
जल्दी से
कोशिश
जल्दी
कर रही
आना
हूँ मैं
चाहिए।
कि डू यू कंडेम दिस वायलेंस और नॉट। मेरा एक ही मुद्दा था पिछले 10 मिनट से, आप
आप
उस
एक ही
मुद्दे
जगह
पे आ
अटक
ही
गई
नहीं
हैं,
पाए।
आप एक ही जगह, आप एक ही मुद्दे पे अटक गई हैं, आप दूसरे भी तो
क्योंकि
सवाल है,
जवाब ही नहीं
दूसरे
आ रहा
सवाल
सर,
कर
सेम
लीजिए आप,
सवाल पूछ के मैं भी थक
इसी
गई,
पे
जवाब
अटके
तो दे
रहिए
दीजिए,
आप।
हाँ या ना, इज इट
और भी
रॉन्ग
तो
और
है,
नो।
मैंने बोल तो दिया आपको, मैंने आपको बोला तो जो आपके मन में ख्याल है वो ख्याल ख्याल ही रहेगा और आपके सवाल के बदले में मेरा सवाल ही
अनफॉर्चुनेटली
रहेगा।
नो। Right. So the point I was trying to make with that video was, well, I was showing off a little, but the point I was trying to make was that a lot of people would think that what I was doing to the Shiv Sena leader there, or panelist, was not right. I was badgering him. Well, yes, I was. But that was also because there was a specific question that I asked him right at the start. This clip that I showed you is about 6 minutes. The entire debate went on for about 15 minutes and I did not get the answer. This is the last 6 minutes of the 15-minute debate that we had on this particular issue. From the start, my question was only one to this panelist, that there has been violence in Maharashtra. There has been vandalism, public property has been broken, and who is to pay for that? It is not the party's money, it's the taxpayers' money. While you keep continuing to decide how you keep your party together, and that's your prerogative to do so, but your prerogative is also to be answerable to the people of that state who have voted you to power. And unfortunately, I did not get that answer from him. So yes, I was badgering him, but in my opinion, I would say that this is the good kind of sensationalism, or the lesser of two evils. I am trying to ask him the questions that perhaps a lot of people in the state of Maharashtra want to ask and want to know the answer to, about what really the party is doing for the last 1 week, where they've been, where they haven't, and what their priorities are. So there are basically, what I'm trying to say is that there are two sides to the same coin. One is the kind where you use this kind of tactic to grab eyeballs when you're trying to ask the question that is going to answer questions of a lot of people in this country, a lot of the viewers that you're watching you. The other side of that same coin is when you are sensationalizing something and not sticking to facts and trying to make a spectacle out of something just because it grabs eyeballs. Now, another example that I would want to give to you is the recent violence that we've seen, and something that was triggered by a suspended BJP leader's comments. Nupur Sharma said something about the prophet. We saw the kind of opposition that came to that in terms of both words and actions, and unfortunately, those actions are something that should not have happened in the country. Now, unfortunately, those comments were made on Times Now. They were made during a TV debate on Times Now, on a show that I'm a producer for. It happened on the debate, which goes at 9 o'clock with Navika Kumar. I'm the producer for that show. So when it happened, we all knew the anchor was not in the studio at the time. She was traveling, so she was in another city. There was a lot of time lag between what the guests were saying, between what she was hearing, and when she was responding back. All of this happens because of technology when you're not in the studio. So there was a little bit of a time lag where she could stop Nupur Sharma from saying what she was saying, disassociate herself and the channel from that. And yet we saw what happened. What also happened is that there are multiple FIRs against the anchor and the channel now, because it's not just Nupur Sharma that people want action against, it's also the channel, because we apparently gave her the platform. Now, we gave her the platform to speak on the subject. She's a spokesperson of a party. We did not give her a platform to come out and say things that would incite violence. So are we culpable in what is happening in the country now? Well, many would say yes, we are. But the fact of the matter is, it is a live debate. There is very little you can do when somebody just runs their mouth off and says something, other than just stopping them at the time, disassociating yourself from what's happening on the debate. And that's really what an anchor or a moderator can do. But that clip then went viral. There were several people who used that clip to talk about how this kind of language or these kind of comments were being allowed on a TV debate, and that perhaps what led to the spiraling of the entire fallout that we saw after that. That kind of sensationalism does not work in the for the bigger picture. It does not work for the greater good, because those people who were talking about this, those people who were sharing this on social media, and that's really handy these days, that kind of sensationalism hurts, and people don't realize it at the time when you're just retweeting a video, or when you're just it takes 10 seconds to pick up your phone and just write a post or write a tweet and make comments that you wouldn't know would have the kind of effect that it would have. But unfortunately, we've seen that happening too. So that really is the other side of how grabbing eyeballs can go completely wrong. And that really is the problem. So as a producer, as an anchor, as somebody on the output desk in a TV news channel, you need to be able to make that differentiation. It's a very, very thin line. There are some subjects that you cannot play with, like in case of Nupur Sharma. But when there are subjects where you talk about people's needs, when there are subjects when you talk about the questions that that you're asking of accountability from your government or from your elected representatives, then if you somewhere border on the side where you're just badgering, asking those questions that you're not getting the answers to, yes, in a bid to also corner the panelists, but also in a bid to grab eyeballs, then that perhaps is okay. You just need to know where to draw that line and to make that distinction. And that really is what is important as far as I think making sense of sensationalism really goes, because it's really hard. We live in a newsroom where we live in times where especially in TV, there's very little time to process your thoughts. It's a rat race for TRPs. It's a rat race for being the first amongst equals, always, as far as the top 4 or 5 TV news channels are concerned. And it's the quicker you are, the better you are, is the assumption. That not necessarily is true. In which process, a lot of times, facts are missed. You don't do your due diligence. And then, well, you suffer the consequences for that. And that is also something that has been the criticism of TV or broadcast in general, right? That we just scratch at the surface, unlike print or unlike a magazine format, because TV does not have the kind of bandwidth, both in terms of money, in terms of resources, or in terms of time. You get something, you're rushing to put it out on air. There is no time to follow up, to ask those 5 questions, the 5 W's in 1 H. There is no time to ask those questions sometimes. And that is the most basic thing. As you find yourself in the midst of a newsroom, you will very soon forget that you have to ask these questions. It is from time to time that you need to keep reminding yourself that you do. It is important. Maybe you are not in a position to take those calls or to influence what's going on the channel, perhaps because you're very low in the hierarchy. But for your individual self to not lose sight of that, you have to, or that is something that at least I do. From time to time, I question what we're doing is right or not, how we could have done it better. Now I am at a position where I can have this conversation with my bosses that, we could have done this differently, or we should not do this, or we could, this is treading dangerously close to somewhere where we shouldn't be going. So right now I'm at the position where I can have that conversation openly with my editors. In some cases you are not, but for your own self growth, you need to realize that there will come a time when you will have to ask these questions, because otherwise you're just ham on a wheel. You're just running into the race and following instructions that everybody else is giving you and not really thinking for yourself. We're all thinking individuals. And it is, yes, you have to be a follower. There are leaders you have to follow instructions, especially in TV. There's absolutely no time to argue. Once you're told something, and because there's a rush to put it on air, you're just doing what you're being told. But sometimes it is required for you to take a step back, look at the bigger picture, and try and figure out if what we're doing is right and what we're doing is not. A lot of people have figured that over the last 10 years that I have been in this industry. A lot of my peers, when we joined TV together, both from IIJNM or from other colleges, wanted to do this. in the last 10 years, about 50 to 60% of them have dropped out because they realized that this is not what we thought we were doing, or not what we thought we wanted to do, or what we were going to do. This is not our cup of tea, either because it is too strenuous, especially TV. You have to bid your social life goodbye after a certain point because it's crazy long hours. Either your hours are terribly weird where nobody else is available to you to have a social life, or you're just working. You have no weekends, you have no public holidays. You're just public holidays are basically more reason to work days in most TV newsrooms. So so a lot of people fall through the cracks, or they choose to opt out because they realize that A, that is not the kind of lifestyle that I want, and B, this is not journalism. This is just sensationalism. This is just noise, and there's no real news. A lot of people I know, a lot of my friends too, uh, have just moved out. Like they're not into the industry anymore. They're now either in corporate communications or they've joined PR. They're with them. It's like if we are spending so many hours of our life doing something that we don't agree with, then it's not worth it. So we move out. That happens a lot these days, especially as far as TV is concerned, because a lot of people are disillusioned. They don't want to be part of TV newsrooms. Uh, all TV newsrooms, as far as I know, are always hiring. Everybody is always in need of people. Everybody is always short staffed because people keep leaving, getting disillusioned with what they see that they do every day. Having said that, it's not all bad. I enjoy being in a TV newsroom. I've done it for 10 years now, most of which has been in Times Now. I was in Beyond for a year, but 9 years I've been in Times Now, from a trainee journalist to now a deputy news editor. Like I have risen up the ranks as far as Times Now is concerned. I've worked with Arnab, I've worked with now Rahul Shivshankar, I've worked with different bosses. Uh, the channel's ideology has also changed over the years in the last 10 years. And even though there are times when I feel like we're doing stuff that really does not matter. We're just like grabbing eyeballs. We're doing these debates because, you know, we pander to a certain kind of audience, and that's just there isn't really any sort of news in this. But there are also days that you're proud of what you're doing. There are days when you ask the questions that the people of this country want answers for. There are days when your reporters are going to the farthest corners of the country to get you stuff which you have the opportunity to produce and put on air as part of the output desk to make it as effective tool possible to reach out to the masses. So that is the power that the output desk of any channel has, to turn 5 hours of raw feed into 50 minutes of content, which is appealing, informative, and an effective tool of both in terms of visual and content to reach out to the viewer. That's the power that you have, and that is something that I really enjoy, which is also why that has kept me going all this while. I only started anchoring a couple of years ago, maybe 4 out of the 10. So for 6 years, and even now, even though I enjoy anchoring, I do anchor, but I still feel the output desk is my forte. That's really where my strength lies, and that is something that I enjoy. So yes, there are a lot of negatives, but there are also a lot of positives as far as broadcast or TV journalism is concerned, and I wouldn't have it any other way. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, Poonam. It was really interesting to hear you talk, especially, what you see on TV and what happens in the newsroom and behind the camera. You never really get to hear firsthand about such things. So thank you for such an informative and a very, I think, introspective talk as well. So if we have any questions, we can take them. So if you can raise your hands, I can ask you to ask a question, or if you want to put it in the chat box, that's also fine. So I think Suryansh wants to ask a question.
What's the process of applying to internships? Will Media House entertain internship application from someone who is not experienced, like first?
Totally. Yeah, totally. And a lot of interns are also retained. Like we've retained a lot of our interns once they finish their degrees.
And I had another question. So you mentioned about most of the news, is TRPs, grabbing eyeballs, right? So how do you keep a balance between grabbing eyeballs and covering news that really matter, matter to the public, the citizen of the country? How do you keep a balance between that?
See, honestly, it really depends on your editor, but usually the part of your day is sort of divided into the evenings where you're just having these kind of debates, which is usually how the format is for most TV channels. Say post 6 or 7 onwards until about 11 is where you're just having debates on the top stories. So those are basically your eyeball grabbing hours of the day, so to say, as far as TRPs are concerned. Through the day is when all you're doing is disseminating information. That is when you're giving the news. If I'm at home and watching TV, say during lunch, then I want to know what has happened through the day. I just want to have a quick snippet of what happened in my state, or what happened in Delhi, or what's happening with the central government. So that is your first half of the day, or your mid-afternoon slot of the day, basically, is where you do things that matter, where you do reports that give you information about what's really happening in terms of schemes that are being pushed out, or schemes that are being stalled, what's happening in terms of how the parliament is functioning, whether it's functioned at all or no, and things like that. So usually, I can't speak for any other newsroom, but for Times Now, that's how it really works. So we divide the day in sort of batches where we concentrate on certain kind of news, and that's how we try and strike the balance.
Okay, and just one last question. I mean, suppose if you disagree with your editor, or someone higher in the rank, and they're asking you to report something which you think needs to be probed deeper, or needs more investigation. So how do you cordially disagree? How do you put your point across that, maybe we need more time, so can we do it maybe later?
You can do it. There is democracy in the Times Now newsroom. Most editors are open to having these kind of discussions where you can have a differing opinion. A lot of times it's possible that you are shut down and you're just like, this is what we feel is right, so this is just how it's going to be. That's going to happen. It happens. It's not, I'm not going to lie to you about that. But again, you also sometimes need to just have faith in the fact that the person who's telling you to do something has perhaps more experience and perspective than you, and in the longer run it might just help. And sometimes fails. After a point, you're there to do a job. You do the job, irrespective of what your personal beliefs are. A lot of people that I'm very good friends with have quit the industry or quit Times Now because they felt that their personal beliefs did not align with the line the channel was towing. Because right now, most our channels are pro the government, or a little right of the center, for sure. A lot of people don't agree with that. But my honest opinion is you're there to do a job. You can have your personal beliefs in your personal time. Professionally, and honestly, it's up to you. If you can strike that balance where you can have your own belief and still do your job the way you're supposed to do it, then that's great. And if you can't, then you take a decision to move out. So that's great too. But I personally believe I'm there to do a job. So yes, I can have a differing opinion, and yes, I can bring it up to the notice of my seniors. But at the end of the day, if they decide, or the editor of the channel decides that this is how it's going to be, then it's my job to execute.
Thank you.
Vibhu Joshi has asked, ma'am, according to you, what is better, anchoring or reporting? From career perspective, I think they meant career perspective.
Yeah, honestly, like I said, I knew I didn't want to report, so I really don't know how it works. So I've never been out in the field, so I don't know about that. In terms of anchoring, let me tell you, you have to have your foundation to be extremely solid for you to be put on the air. Like I said, I was a desk hand. I was on the desk. I was on the output desk for 6 years before I started anchoring, before I was given the opportunity to anchor. Also, it is very important. Personally, I would feel that it is great that I started on the desk and now that I anchor, because now I know exactly how it works. Because when you're in front of the camera, when you're in the studio, you're completely in the blind. You have absolutely no idea what is happening behind the scenes, what are the discussions happening behind the scenes, what really is coming your way. Because I work on the desk, I can use that sort of experience to preempt what could happen next, because that's how we, from the desk, hand it out to our anchors. So I know what can be expected, and the kind of perspective that is needed to, sort of make your graphics or write your anchor links when you're on the desk, that really helps when you're anchoring. So as far as being in front of the camera in a studio and being an anchor is concerned, it definitely does not come easy. You do have to have some sort of foundation, and if you've worked a few years on the output desk, then that really helps. I'm assuming that is not true of reporting, because there are lots of people, lots of reporters from at our channel as well, who have gotten out to report right out of college. So that is not really a prerequisite, so to say, for reporting. So if that is something that you really want to do, then you can jump right to it, and I'm sure there are channels out there to hire.
Okay. Do you have any more questions? Does anybody have any more questions? I urge you all to ask questions, because this is a very good opportunity if you want to get into broadcast journalism, to ask any and more questions about the college, about the course, about how it is in real life reporting and how it's very different. I have a question actually. So I hope.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, so so in this digital age of journalism, right, so more and more people are gravitating towards internet and shows on the internet more than let's say TV or newspapers. So how do you see broadcast journalism changing in the digital age in the coming years?
I feel the audience is very, very different for both like the people who watch news on social media or on their phones on the go are not the people who watch TV channels or debates. The kind of audience is very different. An example to give you on that is some of the videos that we put out on Twitter, right? They get crazy amounts of views. But when you look at the ratings for that same show, they're perhaps bare minimal. Like they're not even comparable to some of our other shows. So the audience is very, very different. So we know the audience that we're catering to, which is not millennials.
Yeah.
So the audience that we're catering to is 25 or 30 and above. So I feel that that audience will continue to be there, because even though now everyone has access to phones and social media, like myself included, I am not Twitter savvy. So, there are a lot of people like that. So I feel it's not like the future of television is doomed, so to say, in digital age. It's just that your audiences are different. So you just have to figure out who your audience is and cater to them accordingly. And that's really how it's going to work as far as existence of TV channels or TV debates is concerned. But they're here to stay. The audience is there. So even though we are moving to a digital age, it may sure eat into a little bit of this thing. Also, TV channels are also now adapting to social media memes. Like we are now, like with Twitter and Instagram and all of that, we are also more, like our team has expanded now in the last couple of years, in the last year or so, in fact. So just from like Facebook and Twitter, we're now pushing more content on Instagram as well, because that's something that many people now are used to for their source of information or for source of news. So TV channels to adapt to use all kinds of tools that are available. But as far as the core TV audience is concerned, I think that's it.
Okay. Shreshti Srinivasan has a question. Ma'am, according to you, how much time will it take to have a good hold in the broadcast and journalism?
I don't know what you mean by good hold, in the sense that if you mean that you are doing well, or if you mean that this is what you want to do and how long will it take you to figure that out, it's just very personal. Like for me, I did it for about 2 years and I knew that's what I wanted to do, which is also why I think I excelled at what I did, because I was happy doing what I was doing. I knew that I had the skill set to do what I was doing, and which is just how I honed my skills effectively. So it's just very, very personal, I feel. But a year, 2 years is enough for you to figure out whether that is what it is that you want to do. It doesn't take very long. It is like the newsroom is fast paced. Your experience in it would be too. So it's not. It won't take you very long to figure out if this is what you want to do.
Somebody has raised their hand. Shrishti, yeah.
Ma'am, actually, the thing is, you spoke about, hello, ma'am, I'm Srishti.
Hi.
So actually, I wanted to ask that you spoke about the stress level, which is currently going on in this field. So how exact, like stress as in what, could you just elaborate on that point? Because I'm a bit confused or on the stress point of view.
See, there's a lot of yelling and screaming. You are working under pressure. Say you're working under tight deadlines all the time. Like you have a submission tomorrow, you have a submission the next minute, every single minute. It's basically that in a TV newsroom. So apart, if you are someone who you think you cannot, work well under pressure, then perhaps you'll take some time to find your footing. Perhaps you'll realize that this is not your cup of tea, or perhaps not. Perhaps you just learn to adjust and adapt to those circumstances. But in terms of stress, it's just that your working hours are much longer. Like our shifts generally are 10 hours by the book. A lot of times they go beyond that. So, which is why I said that you pretty much bid your social life goodbye, because that's just how long you're working. So if that is something that you're okay with, then I think it's fine. It's like some amount of stress is okay. We're young, we can handle it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, Ashwin Shankar, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, Nandana ma'am. Good morning. Hello,
Hi.
Poonam ma'am.
Hi, Ashwin.
Hi, ma'am. I just applied for the broadcast journalism course this year. So, ma'am, and that was a very interesting discussion of yours. Ma'am, I have two questions. May I please ask if you don't
Yes,
mind?
please.
Ma'am, my first question to you is about that action-packed interview of you with two panelists. So, ma'am, don't you think there would be a power tussle between the Sena camp, BJP camp for important portfolio like the Home Ministry and the Finance Minister, especially keeping in mind that Devendra Fadnavis hold the cabinet in the last term when he was the Chief Minister for 5 years? And ma'am, yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, go ahead. Ask your second one also. I'll answer both of them.
Ma'am, like I am going to Bangalore first time, so like, could you tell me good places where like you used to go out with your friends so that we can also go there and
I don't think I'll
have
be
good
able
time.
to help you with that too much, because I went there 10 years ago. I think a lot must have 11 years ago. Actually, I graduated 10 years ago. So I think a lot has changed as far as Bangalore is concerned from when I was back there. But to answer your first question, it's possible. It's possible that they have their issues. It is definitely a power tussle. It's a game of one-upmanship. Everybody wants to show I am better at this than you are, and that really is perhaps the case. But to me, to the tax-paying citizen, how does it matter? It's your party's business. Figure it out. Don't spend my money and my time in fighting out on the streets and doing what it is that you're doing, because that's not acceptable. You can have a power tussle. Everyone does. It happens everywhere. There are fights in families. There are fights among friends. There's insecurities, inferiority, and superiority complex everywhere. So it's possible that that is the case with them. Just the way it all played out doesn't bode well for a democratic country, is what I feel. That's just my personal opinion.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Nandana ma'am, for this opportunity.
It's all right. So do we have any more questions? If not, we can slowly wind up the session. Yeah. So thank you, Poonam, and thank you for answering all the questions very diligently and very sincerely. We thank you on behalf of IIJNM and all
you
to
so
all
much
of
for having
the participants as well. Thank you for joining in. We'll have another session. We'll have another session next week, so please join in. So thank you again, Poonam.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.